welcome to my presentation. My name is Karla Shepherd, and today we're going to look at pure assessment, +1 thinking, and noticing approaches to genre writing. We will also talk about the future implications for what teaching writing can look like. All right, so let's get started then. Let's take this over here. Okay. So here's the presentation outline. We will talk about the crux of the topic, my personal experiences in a paperless classroom during the COVID-19 era. We will look at some research done on a paperless classroom, and we will wrap up with the benefits of a paperless classroom and future writing implications. Word processing technology has existed for approximately 6 decades, yet still hasn't reached its full potential in how it can positively impact our environment and education teaching. Here is what compacted paper and paperboard looks like. Mass manufacturing to the landfill. From the printing press to the mechanization of wood harvesting, the cost of paper became inexpensive and affordable. The level of consumption increased, which led to increased paper waste. Here is the most current data available from 2018 Environmental Protection Agency. Of the 292 million tons of solid municipal waste, about a quarter of it is paper and paperboard. Let's move on to my personal experiences. We will talk about what happened, how it went, what I learned, etc. We will look at examples of what I used, the resources, and then we will talk about the pedagogical implications and the strategies used. I used to teach writing in this way. Step 1, I would present the content, the target forms, and accept papers. I would grade the papers, and then we would repeat until midterm and again until final. This was not practical because it caused delays. It wasn't efficient. It was not especially interactive. And students took much longer to pick up on the target forms. So after I started exclusively teaching online, I began to use Google Docs. Google Docs is a free web-based word processor. What can you do with Google Docs in a classroom? You can do a whole lot. Here's some of what you can do. You can collaborate live with your students. You can have your students collaborate live with each other. You can track their contributions. You can share links. You can allow students to edit shareable documents, and you can create documents. The ability to compartmentalize, share, and edit documents would prove to be tremendously valuable to our course. So let's talk about how it was done exactly. A Google Doc was created for the 4 main essay requirements for the semester. Because they are simultaneously learning process writing, each stage of the essay was included in the document as well. So the research, the plan, the first draft, and the final draft. To accompany the Google Doc portfolio with the essay writing, there was a checklist for peer assessment for student feedback. The checklist included structural and grammatical points that the instructor wished to cover during the course of the semester. So I used the PPP model. The Google Docs was the practice and the production portion of the presentation practice production PPP model. The presentation practice production model is straightforward. First, the instructor introduces the target form, and then your students practice the target form. And the third step of the PPP model is for your students to produce the target form. So let's look at an example of the actual Google document that I used, which included the 4 stages of the process writing. So the research, then the plan, then the first draft, and then the final draft. So this is what it looks like. I don't do this very often, but sometimes I find that if you include some instructions in the students' first language, that they are more motivated sometimes, and you can get a quicker result. So that's what you see here. Here are just some instructions. On the left-hand side, you can title your pieces. each piece so that it stands out and you can just make it easily clickable. So let's see, just going down. So there's room for research. Here we just had them look up relevant images and websites as part of their research. The plan phase, there are many different ways to plan your writing and brainstorm. For example, a Venn diagram. So anything like that would go here. Even an outline would work. So here's the rough draft. So the students would write their rough draft, and then after they finished, they were linked with a partner, and the partner would assess their work. We will look at that peer assessment checklist in a moment. So let's see, let's open this. Okay, so the format is very similar to the layout of the portfolio so that the students catch on quicker, aren't so easily confused. Before you let them go and start assessing the work of their peer, it is necessary to have some practice. Okay, so here are 2 practice checklists. You can use some model essay to allow them to practice with. Okay, so back up at the top. As I was saying earlier, there are structural components to the checklist as well as grammatical points. And these can be made, of course, these checklist items can be tiered to match the levels of the writing that you're teaching. Okay. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint and talk about some of the methodologies used. And then we will look at more examples. So you just looked at collaborative learning, peer assessment. So collaborative learning happens when 2 or more people attempt to learn something together. Because this work is not done independently, students are able to capitalize on each other's resources and skills. The benefit, you have increased audience awareness, motivation, and willingness to make revisions. Okay, and peer assessment. This happens when students work in pairs or small groups to give each other feedback on their work. The language learning theories involved are social interaction and collaborative learning. The benefit, it encourages students to become responsible and accountable for their own learning rather than leaving everything to the teacher. Students are more likely to give each other valuable feedback on written texts. Additionally, it gives students the opportunity to engage in constructive and less intimidating talk about their written work. Lastly, it gives students a chance to receive feedback from real audiences. So, noticing hypothesis and +1 thinking. We haven't seen this yet, but we will look at it in just a minute. So the noticing hypothesis. It's a theory in second language acquisition that cites that learners must consciously notice the grammatical form of input in order to grasp and understand the grammatical form of the input. According to Schmidt, 2010, a learner must attend to and notice linguistic features of the input that they are exposed to if those forms are to become intake for learning. The benefit, students are confronted with the language forms, in this case, with incorrect examples. Okay, so I used incorrect examples of what a 1-paragraph essay structure looked like. Also, the checklist is a means to draw attention to what they should be noticing, and that can help increase your levels of acquisition. Okay, so I used incorrect examples for the 1-paragraph structure. As I was saying, the items on the checklist and the different stages of the process writing. This increases learner outcomes because of the heightened level of awareness of the forms and the required tasks, especially when comparing their work to the work of their classmates. Okay, so that also increases noticing. So +1 thinking means that for every interaction between a learner and something, the instructor, the material, another learner, or something else, an additional option is provided. Okay. In this particular case, the +1 was introduced in the presentation phase as the most advanced paragraph form in terms of the grammar used. This was due to there being multiple levels taught during the semester, as well as providing additional input. So for the +1 thinking, you can provide additional input, as well as tier the levels. So if you're teaching multiple levels, you can sometimes just include an example that is a bit more advanced, and that's how you can do +1 thinking, okay? So the benefit is an additional input for students a level higher, as well as helping to reduce the amount of materials needed to be created for courses. To encourage students to notice the input enhancement techniques such as color coding are used to highlight the important structural components of the essay. So also input enhancement was used in order to influence more noticing, okay? Additionally, the students compare the essays. There are 2 acceptable essays, one which is a beginner level and one which is more advanced. The third essay is an incorrect example of what to do. We will look at that in a second. As well as comparing the previously mentioned items, the students are able to compare the different essay genres, okay? For example, what a comparative essay looks like versus a process essay or a persuasive essay. Lastly, during the peer review stages, the students compare their work with each other and against a checklist, okay? The +1 component of the essays is the inclusion of the more advanced of the essays, which provides additional input by encouraging students to use more advanced forms. It is also hoped that this will increase the motivation of the students to excel. Moreover, the students provide each other with additional input via their portfolio work, which is shared via an open format. Okay, so let's look at the noticing and the +1s. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, the +1 thinking, I've started with very basic essays. Why cats are better than dogs, and then moving into an essay of comparison, and then an essay here of what not to do. Okay. And then moving down here, I've used color coding to allow more noticing of the different structural components of the 1 paragraph essay. So we have introduction, body, conclusion. And again here for the transitional words and signal phrases for the 1 paragraph essay. Okay. All right. So let's go back to this here, and let's look at an example of a research study done. This was by Schoenfeld and Meischer et al. 2017. They said the primary rationale for the paperless classroom is to promote a more efficient and organized classroom while preparing students for the practical world outside school walls. In this research study, each student used a laptop as a replacement for books and notebooks and managed his or her learning assignment with their laptop. This was part of their personal school equipment. Handwriting and reading from paper were rare. So they used many different instructional methods. They used media-enriched learning, adaptive learning, group learning. They used a flipped classroom and varied technological environments. So I encourage you to come back and read through each of these methodologies used. Let's look at the benefits based on the research paper. So they are saying that you can develop a solid rationale for ideas for teaching in a paperless classroom using varied technologies, and developing innovative pedagogies. So for students with disabilities, especially dyslexia, they are able to improve their academic performance. Some other research studies on the benefits of a paperless classroom suggested that You can enhance the instructor's ability to solicit active participation from all students during class, resulting in immediate and meaningful assessment of student learning. And you can provide needed real-time feedback and assistance to maximize student learning and enhance performance. So a higher level of satisfaction was noted from students, and students are said to receive a more personalized, interactive, effective, and enjoyable learning environment. Lastly, teaching in a paperless classroom can employ constructivist pedagogies that place students and learning at the center of the classroom. So let's look at the outcomes for my course, my writing course. I took a student survey, and for the questions, how well do you know the 4 stages of process writing, and how well do you know the parts of the 1-paragraph essay? Towards the end of the course, over half of the students agreed that they understood it well or very well. And all of my portfolios, over 95% of my students brought their portfolios to completion. Okay, and the future implications, so you can use copy and paste detection for students to make sure that they're not plagiarizing work, website verification tools for them, some time spent editing notifications would be nice, and duplicate copy detection would be very nice to have in the future. Okay, and here are some discussion questions that I'd like you to look at and discuss amongst yourselves. And let's conclude with this here. Thank you guys for listening. This is a quote by Schumacher. He says, "Infinite growth of material consumption in an infinite world is an impossibility." Thank you all. Take care, and I hope to see you later. Bye.